Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at UiPath, a company that's really making waves in the world of automation.
Yeah, it's an exciting space to be in right now, and it looks like we've got a lot to cover today. From what I can see, we've got info about their company, their use of AI, and even some of the challenges they might face. Should be a good one.
Definitely. So let's start with the basics. We know UiPath is famous for RPA, robotic process automation, but it seems like they're doing a lot more than just basic RPA now. What's really caught your eye in the research?
Well, what I find really interesting is how they're integrating AI into their platform. Like they've got AI Center and document understanding. AI Center lets companies actually embed machine learning models right into their workflows, you know? So their automation becomes much smarter and more adaptive.
So can you give me an example?
Sure. Imagine a robot that can not only process invoices, but it can also use AI to spot ones that might be fraudulent.
Oh, wow. That's a really good example. So it's taking it to a whole other level. What about document understanding? How does that work?
Okay, so think about all the time businesses spend manually extracting data from documents, right? Document understanding uses AI-powered OCR, so UiPath robots can actually read and understand documents like contracts, invoices, stuff like that. Then they extract the important info automatically.
Oh, so it's streamlining those processes that used to take forever.
Exactly.
Okay, so UiPath is making its robots, faster, smarter, more capable using AI. But what about those companies that specialize in generative AI, like OpenAI and Anthropic? Are those guys competitors to UiPath, or could they work together?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's tricky. I mean, on one hand, you could definitely see them as potential competitors. Their LLMs, large language models, can do some of the things that RPA has traditionally done, like summarizing text, even writing simple code. But UiPath seems to be getting ahead of this. They're actually partnering with these companies and integrating their LLMs into their platform.
So they're like, hey, let's work together instead of fighting.
Yeah, exactly. Think of it like combining each other's strengths. UiPath is really good at building those solid automation workflows, and then LLMs bring that advanced language understanding to the party. Like they're using Anthropic's Claude LLM in their autopilot product, so users can create automations just by giving simple instructions in plain English.
So they're blending traditional RPA with the latest AI. That's really interesting. But speaking of UiPath, their latest earnings report kind of tells a different story. They had really good revenue growth, but then they gave this really cautious outlook for the next quarter. What's going on there?
Yeah, it does seem a little strange at first glance. I mean, their gross margins are great, so they're running pretty efficiently. But they're predicting a big drop in revenue for Q1 of fiscal year 2026. One key thing the research points out is that they specifically mentioned global macroeconomic uncertainty.
So businesses are being a bit hesitant to spend right now.
Yeah, exactly. They're a bit more cautious. And that means longer sales cycles for UiPath.
So it's not really about UiPath itself, but more like a general economic trend.
That's it. It's not necessarily reflecting poorly on them. It's just the reality of the current economic situation.
Makes sense. But this brings up another question. If their margins are so good, why are they still reporting a net loss?
Well, it boils down to how they're investing their money. They're really focused on growth right now. So they're pouring resources into sales and marketing research and development and even stock-based compensation. These expenses are all about expanding the business, but right now they're outweighing those great gross profits.
So it's like a long-term strategy. They're okay with some losses now to get big gains later.
Exactly. It's a common approach for companies in a fast-paced market like this. They want to be the leader, so they're willing to invest heavily upfront to get there.
Okay, let's take a closer look at how these different AI approaches are actually working. Your research compares how UiPath is integrating Anthropic's Claude LLMs versus the tech from OpenAI. What are the key takeaways there?
Well, the interesting thing is they seem to be using each LLM for specific purposes. Integrating Claude really emphasizes trust and safety, which makes sense for businesses, especially in certain sectors.
Right, because businesses are dealing with sensitive information, so
Yeah.
they need to be extra careful.
Yeah, exactly. And for example, they're using Claude in healthcare for things like summarizing medical records, where accuracy and control are super important.
So Claude's like their go-to for those really sensitive tasks where they can't afford any mistakes. What about OpenAI then? How are they using that?
OpenAI's technology, on the other hand, is all about versatility and creativity. It's really good at generating human-like text and code. So they're using it for broader applications like content creation and tasks that need more flexible language processing.
It sounds like they're really trying to make the most of both approaches.
Absolutely. They're not limiting themselves to just one kind of AI. It's more like they're building a hybrid platform combining Claude's accuracy with OpenAI's generative power.
That's a really smart move.
Yeah.
It shows they're not afraid to experiment and find the best AI solutions for their customers.
Exactly. And speaking of different approaches, your research also compares UiPath Autopilot with OpenAI's technology. What do you think about those two?
That's what I'm really curious about. Let's dive into that right after this.
Sounds good to me. Welcome back to the deep dive. Before the break, we were talking about how UiPath Autopilot compares to OpenAI's technology.
Yeah, I'm really curious about that. Are they really direct competitors? They both seem to be doing AI-powered automation, but are they actually doing the same thing?
Well, that's a good question, and the research suggests that they're not really head-to-head rivals. It's more like they're tackling different parts of the automation world. You see, UiPath Autopilot is really good at streamlining business processes, particularly those that are rule-based and structured, things like invoice processing or onboarding new employees. Autopilot is designed to integrate smoothly with existing systems and make sure everything flows efficiently.
So Autopilot is all about keeping things running smoothly, like a well-oiled machine.
Exactly, and it's got a big focus on governance and security, which is really important for businesses that handle sensitive data. And what's also cool is that Autopilot is designed to be pretty user-friendly, even for people who don't know how to code. They've got this text-to-workflow feature where you can just use plain language instructions to create automations.
That's pretty smart. It means more people within a company can use it to optimize their work. So if Autopilot is about making existing processes better, what about OpenAI's technology? What makes their approach stand out?
OpenAI's strength, especially with their GPT models, is their generative capabilities. They're really good at tasks that need creativity, complex language understanding, and generating text that sounds like a human wrote it, or even code. Think of things like writing, marketing, copy translating languages, or even composing music. It's more about pushing the limits of what AI can do rather than just automating what we already have.
So it sounds like OpenAI is more about augmenting human creativity and expanding possibilities with AI, while Autopilot is focused on making current processes more efficient and reliable.
That's a great way to put it. And another difference is that OpenAI offers its technology through APIs and SDKs. So developers can use it as a building block for all sorts of applications and platforms. It's a much more adaptable tool set compared to Autopilot, which is really tied into the UiPath ecosystem.
So it's not really a case of one being better than the other. They each have their own strengths, and they could even work together depending on what a business needs.
Absolutely. Like a company could use Autopilot for all those standardized back office tasks and then use OpenAI's GPT models to create personalized customer interactions or generate creative content for their marketing campaigns.
Okay, so going back to UiPath's financials for a second. We talked about their conservative guidance for this year. They're saying there will be a significant drop in revenue in Q1 of fiscal year 2026. But for the whole year, they're still expecting growth.
Yeah.
What does that tell us about their strategy right now?
It's a few things, really. First, there's definitely the global economic uncertainty we talked about. Businesses are taking longer to make decisions about spending, and UiPath knows that. But there are also some internal strategic things happening. They just acquired Peak AI, a company that specializes in AI for retail and manufacturing. Integrating that new company could be causing some short-term disruption as they figure out how to combine their products and go-to-market strategies.
So they're dealing with external economic pressures and internal changes at the same time.
Yeah.
Makes sense why they'd be a bit cautious in the short term, even if they're confident about the long term.
Exactly. And there's another interesting point from your research. UiPath specifically mentioned challenges in the U.S. public sector. It sounds like that's a pretty big part of their business, even though they haven't said exactly how much. They've got a whole public sector unit, and they even have FedRAMP authorization, which is a big security certification for working with the government.
So if the government slows down its spending, that would definitely affect UiPath's revenue.
Yeah, exactly. Analysts are estimating that their public sector business globally is somewhere between 15% and 25%. And a big chunk of that is probably coming from the U.S. So their conservative guidance is probably taking that into account as well.
Okay, I want to go back to something we talked about earlier that I'm still a bit confused about. UiPath has these really high gross margins, which means they're making good profit on their products, but they're still reporting a net loss overall. How does that work?
It all comes down to how they're choosing to invest their money and how that shows up in their financials. So their core operations are very profitable. That's why they have those great gross margins. But at the same time, they're spending a lot of money on things that are going to help them grow, like sales and marketing research and development and even stock-based compensation to attract and keep talented people.
So basically, even though their core business is profitable, all that spending on growth is outweighing the profit right now.
That's exactly it. It's a common thing for companies that are in a market that's growing really fast. They're
Yep.
focused on becoming the leader in the long run, even if it means they don't make as much profit right now.
It's a risky strategy, but it could pay off big time if they can pull it off. I wanted to talk a bit more about the competition. We already touched on how UiPath might overlap with companies like OpenAI and Anthropic. Are they more like collaborators or competitors? Or maybe a bit of both?
That's a really important question, and it's not so simple. At first glance, you might think they're definitely competitors since they're all involved in AI-powered automation. But if you look closer, it's a bit more complicated. OpenAI and Anthropic are really good at creating general-purpose AI models that can be used for lots of different things. But UiPath is focused on building automation solutions specifically for businesses with a big emphasis on making sure things are secure and well-managed.
So they each have their own areas of expertise. But is there a chance they could end up competing directly?
There's definitely some overlap, especially as OpenAI's models become more advanced and can handle more complex tasks. Like ChatGPT, for example, has already shown it can automate some of the things that RPA has traditionally done.
So how is UiPath dealing with that?
They're being proactive about it. Instead of ignoring the challenge, they're actually partnering with both OpenAI and Anthropic. They're integrating their LLMs into their own platform, so they can benefit from the latest advancements in generative AI while still focusing on what they do best, building robust and reliable automation solutions for businesses.
So they're turning a potential problem into a strength. It's really interesting how companies have to adapt so quickly as technology changes.
It is. It shows that UiPath is serious about being a leader in AI-powered automation, no matter if they're building their own AI models or working with companies that specialize in that technology. It's a really smart way to make sure their customers have access to a wide range of powerful tools.
Speaking of strategy, I'd love to hear your thoughts on UiPath's long-term vision for automation. Where do they see themselves fitting in as things change so rapidly?
That's a great question, and it's something that UiPath has actually been pretty clear about. They want to become the go-to platform for anything and everything related to automation. They imagine a world where businesses can automate any process they want, no matter how complex or how much AI is needed. They want to be like the central hub of this automated future, providing all the tools and technology to manage a workforce that includes both humans and digital workers.
So they're not just focused on RPA or even just AI.
Yeah.
They want to be the brains behind the whole automation ecosystem.
Exactly. They're betting that in the future, work will be a mix of human creativity and the efficiency of automation. And they're building a platform that can help businesses adapt to that new way of working.
It's a pretty ambitious vision, but they seem to be in a good position to make it happen. They've got a strong track record of innovation and some really good partnerships.
Yeah, I agree. But it brings up another really important question. As automation gets more and more sophisticated, what does that mean for human workers? Will AI end up taking away a lot of jobs? Or are there ways that humans and machines can work together in new and interesting ways? We should definitely explore that more when we come back.
That sounds like a great discussion for after the break. We'll be back with more from the Deep Dive. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Before the break, we were talking about AI and the future of work. It's definitely a topic that makes people think, both in a good way and a maybe not so good way.
Yeah, it's a big question for a lot of people. I mean, it makes sense to be worried about jobs going away as automation gets more and more advanced. But if you look back, history shows us that new technology usually creates new opportunities, even when it disrupts things.
That's good to hear.
Mm.
But how do you see that happening specifically with AI and automation?
Well, one way to think about it is that AI will probably automate tasks, not entire jobs. It's really good at those repetitive rule-based things that people find boring anyway, and that frees up humans to focus on stuff that requires creativity, critical thinking, emotional intelligence. Things AI isn't so good at yet.
So it's not about replacing humans. It's more about AI becoming a tool that helps us do our jobs better and maybe even makes work more enjoyable.
Exactly. It's more like working together than competing. For instance, in healthcare, AI can help doctors by analyzing medical images or spotting potential drug interactions. That gives doctors more time to actually spend with their patients, giving them personalized care and really building those relationships.
That's a great example. It shows how AI can make things more efficient and improve the quality of human interaction at the same time.
And another thing to remember is that we'll likely see new jobs and even entire industries popping up that are directly related to AI and automation. We'll need people to develop, train, and manage these AI systems, and we'll need people who understand both the technology and the business side of things to figure out how to integrate automation into different workflows.
So the future might not be humans versus machines, but humans and machines working side by side.
Right. It's all about adapting and learning new skills. The people who embrace lifelong learning and develop skills that complement AI will be the ones who really thrive in this new world of work.
That makes a lot of sense. It's a good reminder that both individuals and companies need to invest in training and education to be ready for the future.
Absolutely. And I think companies like UiPath actually have an important part to play in this too. By making automation platforms that are easy to use and by giving more people the power to create automations, they can make this technology less scary for people who aren't tech experts.
The more people who understand and feel comfortable using automation tools, the easier this transition will be.
Exactly. Now let's switch gears back to UiPath and their financial performance. We've talked about their strong margins, their focus on growth, and the fact that they're currently losing money. But what's the big picture here? What do you think about their potential as an investment?
Yeah, that's what I'm really interested in. The automation market seems like it's full of opportunity,
Hmm.
but UiPath also has some challenges to overcome, like more competition and the uncertainty in the global economy. So what do you think about their prospects?
It's definitely a mixed bag. There are some really good things and some potential risks to think about. On the plus side, they're the leader in a market that's growing really quickly. The global RPA market is expected to be worth billions of dollars in the next few years, and UiPath is in a good position to get a big piece of that.
And those partnerships they have with OpenAI and Anthropic are really valuable too. It means they can offer a wider range of automation tools that are even more powerful.
Exactly, and they're really focused on making their products user-friendly, which could give them an advantage as they try to make automation accessible to a wider audience, not just technical people.
But what about those challenges we talked about? How worried should investors be about the competition and the economic uncertainty?
Those are definitely valid concerns. There are more and more companies entering the automation market, both big established players and new startups. So UiPath has to keep innovating and find ways to stand out from the crowd.
And the global economic situation could slow down their growth as businesses become more hesitant to spend money.
Yeah, that's true. And their conservative guidance for the next quarter shows they're aware of that. But their long-term growth projections are still positive. They seem to think these challenges are temporary, not permanent.
So it's kind of a balancing act. They've got a strong position in a market that has huge potential, but they have to deal with some bumps in the road right now.
Exactly. It really comes down to each investor's individual goals and how much risk they're comfortable with. If you believe in the future of automation and you're okay with some ups and downs along the way, then UiPath could be a good investment. They have the experience, the technology, and the vision to be a major player in this space. But if you're looking for a quick profit or you don't like taking risks, then it might be better to wait and see what happens.
It's a classic high-risk, high-reward situation.
Exactly. And that's what makes the stock market so interesting. There's something for everyone as long as you do your research, understand the risks, and make smart decisions.
Well said. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into UiPath. We've covered a lot of ground today, from their technology and strategy to their financials and their role in the future of automation. It's been a fascinating conversation, and I hope our listeners have learned a lot.
It's been great exploring all this with you.
And as always, we encourage everyone to do their own research and talk to a financial advisor before making any investment decisions.
Thanks for listening to the Deep Dive.